Welcome to today's Explainer. Let's just dive right into this, because today we're tackling a question that honestly frustrates so many of us. Why do some individuals get incredibly wealthy, seemingly out of thin air, while others work incredibly hard their entire lives but stay totally stuck? Well, we are going to explore the idea that the rich don't just earn money, they actually invent it. If you've ever felt like you're following all the rules but somehow still falling behind, the insights from this source material are going to completely flip your perspective. Here's the roadmap for today. We're going to cover boldness over smarts, the illusion of money, the four pillars, two types of investors, and finally, a summary and action plan to tie it all together. All right, section 1, boldness over smarts. So we're all kind of taught that getting good grades and having technical knowledge is the golden ticket, right? But out in the real world, it's actually self-doubt that holds most of us back. Look at this stark contrast we have here. On one side, there's a young Alexander Graham Bell. Demand for his new telephone was exploding, so he boldly went and asked Western Union for $100,000 for his patent. Now, they actually scoffed at him, but his sheer boldness eventually led to the creation of AT&T. But then, on the other side, we have this really tragic reality from the text, a 45-year-old downsized manager literally begging security guards just to let him ask for his old job back because he's terrified of losing his house. Clinging to that illusion of job security, it led to begging. But boldness? Boldness created an absolute empire. Which brings us to a really powerful quote from the text. Often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. You see, in today's information age, relying on old ideas, like just working hard and crossing your fingers for a pension, those are actually massive liabilities now. You need what the author calls financial chutzpah. If your fear of losing is stronger than your desire to win, well, your inner financial genius is basically just going to stay suppressed.
And that exact boldness is the absolute engine of financial intelligence. Our source material defines this not just as, being good at math, but as the ability to actually create options for yourself. It's about looking at a totally bad situation, a real lemon, and thinking of creative ways to squeeze out millions. The author talks about teaching this concept through a board game called Cash Flow. And what happens is, players quickly realize that their real-life financial habits, like getting totally flustered by numbers or just missing completely obvious opportunities, are mirrored right there on the board. True financial genius is really about opening up your options, so you are never, ever backed into a corner.
Moving right along to section 2, the illusion of money. Now this brings us to a ridiculously bold claim. Money is not real. It is quite literally just an agreement. The poor and the middle class, they work physically hard for money, thinking it's this tangible, super scarce thing. But the rich, they realize that our single most powerful asset is our mind. In the information age we live in today, millions can be made instantaneously from absolutely nothing but ideas and agreements. Seriously, let me show you exactly how this works with a real-world example from the text. Let's walk step by step through this mind-blowing real estate deal from the depressed Phoenix market back in the early 90s. Okay, step 1. The author found a house that used to be worth $75,000 sitting on the courthouse steps for just $20,000. Step 2. He borrowed $2,000 from a friend to cover the down payment. Step 3. While the paperwork was still processing, he put out an ad selling the house for $60,000 with zero money down. And obviously, a buyer jumped right on it. Then, step 4. After paying back that original $2,000 loan plus a little bit of interest, the author created a $40,000 promissory note. So the buyer got a house for no money down, and the author essentially invented $40,000 out of thin air just by putting a smart agreement together. Crazy, right? And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of that mindset. By repeating that exact same process just 6 times in his spare time, the author created $190,000 in paper assets. Those notes paid a 10% interest rate, which generated roughly $19,000 a year in passive income. And guess what the total working time was for all 6 of those transactions? About 30 hours. Think about that. Because he used borrowed money for the initial down payments and paid it right back immediately, his actual cash invested was zero. So his return on investment was, technically speaking, infinite. So I want you to genuinely ask yourself right now, which path actually sounds harder? Working physically hard at a job, paying up to 50% of your hard-earned income in taxes, and then trying to scrounge whatever is left into a savings account, earning a tiny fraction of a percent in interest? Or taking the time to really develop your financial intelligence so you can harness the power of your own brain to invent money? The cost of playing it safe is actually massive when you look at it like that. Okay, let's jump into section 3, the 4 pillars. Now, you can't just run out tomorrow and try to magically invent money without a solid foundation. I mean, that's just gambling. To minimize your risk and truly spot these hidden opportunities, you've got to master 4 core technical skills. First up is accounting. This is your basic financial literacy, your ability to actually read the numbers and understand the story they're telling you. Second is investing, which is the science of having your money make money for you. Third is understanding markets. You have to grasp supply and demand, like knowing people were absolutely desperate to sell in Phoenix, but buyers still really wanted homes. And finally, fourth, the law. This means using corporate structures and tax advantages to legally protect and grow your wealth. Mastering these 4 pillars is exactly what separates true investing from just throwing your money at a wall and praying something sticks.
Let's actually see how this builds in real life using those very same pillars. It always starts small. The author bought this cute, kind of rundown $45,000 house in Oregon for just $5,000 down. A year later, the market rebounded, and he sold it for $95,000. Then, using his knowledge of the law, specifically something called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, which legally lets you swap real estate without immediately paying taxes on your gains, he rolled all those untaxed profits straight into a $300,000 12-unit building in Beaverton. 2 years after that, sold it for $495,000, and rolled that right into an $875,000 30-unit building in Phoenix. Eventually, a Colorado investor bought that final property for $1.2 million. Do you see what happened? He planted a tiny $5,000 seed, and by applying accounting, investing, markets, and the law, he grew the whole shebang into a massive fortune.
That incredible timeline perfectly sets up this next quote. Great opportunities are not seen with your eyes. They are seen with your mind. You see, that $45,000 Oregon house, it had been sitting on the market for over a year. Everyone else saw it with their eyes and just walked right on by. But because he had the financial training, the author saw its true potential with his mind. All right, section 4, 2 types of investors. So, how do you actually become someone who spots these invisible deals? Well, the investing world is fundamentally divided into 2 distinct paths. Type 1 is the package buyer. This is someone who, goes to a broker and buys a mutual fund or a REIT, a real estate investment trust, right off the shelf. It's kind of like buying a pre-built computer at the store. It's clean, it's simple, and honestly, it's totally fine. But then you have type 2, the deal creator. This investor buys the individual components and builds the computer completely from scratch. They assemble the opportunity themselves. And while being a type 1 is safe, the massive exponential wealth we've been talking about today, that is absolutely exclusively reserved for the type 2 creator. Which brings us to section 5, summary and action plan. We've definitely thrown a lot of light on the story of this chapter and the lessons learned in detail. So here is your definitive summary of what was said. The old conventional idea of working hard at a secure job and just slowly saving your taxed income, it isn't just outdated. It is literally an active financial liability today. True wealth does not come from your physical labor. It comes from having the boldness and the financial intelligence to recognize that money is just an agreement. Once you truly understand that, you stop being a victim of the economy and you start creating your own options. So, what should be done? How do you actually become that type 2 deal creator? Here is your concrete action plan. First, you have to learn to find opportunities that others completely miss. Stop looking with your eyes and start looking with your trained mind. Second, learn how to raise money without using a bank. Actually, the author gives an unbelievable example in the text of finding a $1.2 million apartment building that he knew was worth $2 million. He didn't have the cash, so he tied it up with a contract for a $100,000 deposit. He then sold his position in that contract to another investor for $50,000. I mean, he made $50,000 in 3 days without actually buying a single thing, because investing is about knowing, not buying. And third, organize smart people. Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Hire advisors and professionals who are way smarter than you are. I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought. Most people just sit around complaining that they don't have the money, or they just wait forever for the perfectly safe opportunity to miraculously drop into their lap. It's like they're waiting for all the traffic lights to be green for 5 straight miles before they even bother starting their car. But the rich, they know that luck is created, exactly like money is invented. So, are you going to keep clinging to the old, safe ways, or are you going to step up, embrace your own financial genius, and start creating your own luck today? The choice is entirely up to you.